Folks, if you like wrestling, you should consider the Spartan Combat Nationals. It's the only tournament that I know of where you can wrestle beach, freestyle, Greco, and Folkstyle all in the same tournament. It's going down this April 8th through the 10th in Jacksonville, Florida. Register now at SpartanCombat.com. Now let's get to the show.
I'm getting ready to run out, and my coach grabs me, and he smacks me right across the face. Whack! And again, you got to understand, I haven't been around wrestling that long. I didn't know that people were doing this, So, and I remember running out and wrestling, and I came back, and during the whole match, the only thing I was thinking about, why the hell did he just smack me in the face?
We can endure anything and adapt and pivot and change. Wrestling gave us that ability.
I would say nothing in life has impacted me more than the things wrestling has taught me in terms of self-reflection, resilience.
Toughness. Some guys have it, some guys don't.
Adversity, 100%. How to pick myself up and be a man after I failed.
And everything that has shaped my life and where I'm at today would not be there without the values and basically the lessons I've learned through the sport of wrestling.
For me, wrestling saved my life because it allowed me to focus and channel my energy.
We're fortunate if you wrestle, because if you wrestle, natural talent helps, but it's 5% of the ingredient. It pales in comparison to heart and technique and effort.
It humbled me, taught me humility. Nothing can humble you more than wrestling. I think it's the learning to adapt, right? You learn how to adapt, you learn how to solve problems.
If I look back at my time I spent wrestling, if it gave me one thing more than anything else, it's mental toughness.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Wrestling Changed My Life podcast. This is your host, Ryan Warner. As always, we're presented by Spartan Combat. Spartan Combat is hosting their national tournament April 8th through the 10th in Jacksonville, Florida. Go to SpartanCombat.com to register. Our guest today is Lee Pritts, assistant coach at Arizona State, a 19-year veteran at coaching at the D1 level. He was also an All-American for Eastern Michigan back in 1996. Rest in peace to the Eastern Michigan wrestling program. Lee is a lot of fun, and we covered a lot of topics, folks. I hope you enjoyed this one. Fan of the week goes to our man Tom Robbins, a wrestler from the 70s, a father, and the listener of this show. Thank you so much for listening, Tom, and for reaching out. And that's it, folks. Let's give it up for the great Lee Pritts. Lee Pritts, welcome to the podcast, sir.
Hey, man, I appreciate you having me on. Thank you.
Absolutely. Love having a Florida guy on.
Oh, yeah. Florida roots.
Yes, sir. Let's start this one. Grammy School of Wrestling. I know you were an instructor for many years, and a lot of people forget just how powerful the Grammy system was and how popular it was. Tell me about just your experience working those camps and what kind of impact they had back in the day.
Man, I got introduced to him by Mark Strickland. Mark came through the Great Bridge program with Steve Martin, and I'm sure I'll get in trouble if I don't mention Wayne and, Billy Jr. and Billy Sr., everyone else that goes through. But I guess he started with Wayne Martin at Great Bridge, and then Stevie took over his junior and senior year. Well, we go to junior college together, and it was first semester. I remember Strickland was like, "Hey, I got to go to Kansas City and do a camp with my old coaches. Do you want to go?" I'm like, "Heck yeah, let's roll." And, we drove over there, and the old man was there. Old man Martin was there, and Wayne, Steve. And I remember spending, whatever it was, 2-3 days there on that weekend clinic. And we drove back, and I was like, man, that was good, and that summer, Strickland said, "Hey, why don't you come to camp all summer?" So I was like, yeah. So I went there and basically just volunteered for 4 weeks. And at the end of this, we would go Sunday to Thursday would be camp. And then we'd go back to Virginia Beach or whatever for the weekend. And sometimes we'd go down to the old man's farm, and we'd go down to the farm in Knott's Island, and and then the old man would put you through 3-hour drill sessions. And not only 3-hour drill, half the time it was the same move over for 3 hours. And he would have you do it like every eighth of a turn and be videotaping it. And then he'd go back and watch that video. And then he would come in the next day and want to do the same thing again, but make a little adjustment on it. And it was, it was taxing, but it was really good. The attention to detail is what it was teaching us. Is the attention to detail was so heavy. And and then after that summer, I remember the old man came up to me and Steve and I hit it off real good, and everyone, Wayne, and the old man came up to me and says, "Hey, I want you to work our camps," and that's how it started. And then I don't know how long I did them, 15, 18 years, year after year, just going back and forth. So it was really Mark Strickland who got me my start in there.
So Steve Martin's dad would film you guys drilling and actually watch it to the level of detail to have you guys redo it the next day, essentially?
Yes.
Wow. Oh my God. That's obsessive, but I love it.
It was super obsessive. And he literally, you go into the center circle and he would have you drill it at this angle, the whole hold. Then you start again at an eighth of a turn, and he would film it there, and then another eighth, all the way over 360 degree. So he had every detail of it, and he would literally videotape that, and then he would go study it and come back and go, "Hey, we need to move your hand this way, half inch." And it was actually unbelievable.
That's all. I just got done watching the Tom Brady documentary on ESPN, Man in the Arena, and there's a couple segments of how obsessive Belichick was about details, and it sounds like this guy was on that same level of like professionalism and prep work.
Oh, I remember walking in and he had this control panel, and it had like a knob like this where he could fast forward and rewind video, and it was so high tech, especially back then, and I'd walk into the farm and he'd be sitting on his couch watching video of practice. You watching video of practice, and so he was ultra obsessive.
And this is my ignorance to the system, but was it only Grammy stuff, or was it a whole system of wrestling, neutral and everything?
Yeah, they had a whole system, and it's funny because you would think it's the whole bottom work, but they had a whole top series, they had a whole feet series, both offense and defense. And they kept evolving. They didn't just keep it. This is the system. The tale is the old man coached at Granby High School in Norfolk, Virginia. And old man Martin said he had a guy that used to do a forward roll from his feet. He would stand up and do a forward roll, but almost like dive underneath the guy's legs. And that was the original Granby. And then it turned into like the shoulder roll. Now they went into their high-low and all the different variations of it now. And then they got into the force roll series. So it was, that's really where it took off. But then they were taking all the guys that they had coming through, I think they were sending them all to Michigan State back then. And that's when Michigan State won their national title, was with all the Granby guys.
So Granby was the name of a school, and they just need to move after that. I didn't know that.
Granby High School. And they won, I believe my numbers could be off 1 or 2 years, but I believe it's 21 out of 22 years or 22 out of 23 years that Billy Martin Sr. won the Virginia State title at Granby High School.
Holy smokes. That is crazy. That's a story waiting to be told there. Whoever's listening to this, that's an amazing run. And just the impact they've had is so big.
Well, then you go on to Great Bridge High School, right, where they were doing the same system. And Wayne Martin, I don't know how many Wayne won, but I know he won a bunch. And then Steve came in and coached for 13 years and won 12 out of 13 state titles.
Wow. What a legacy.
It's unbelievable, right?
That's crazy. And knowing your background, you come from Florida initially. I didn't realize you went to JUCO first. Yeah. What was the path for you to get into wrestling in Fort Lauderdale?
I was a gymnast, and I was gymnastics, karate, diving. I was all these other sports. And I walked into the hallway in 9th grade and the first day of school. My sister was 3 years older than me. And so she knew the wrestling coach, and she was an elite gymnast. So he comes up to me and goes, "Hey, I want you to wrestle." I weighed 85 pounds,
Yeah.
And I only knew of WWF, and I was like, I can't wrestle. Those dudes are huge. And he's like, "No, they have weight classes." And I went, and it just flashed in my brain. I couldn't, I was a big Jimmy Superfly Snuka fan back then. And all I could think about was jumping off the turnbuckle and drop kicking another 85-pound dude. I was like, "This is awesome. I'm in." And it was like within a week or maybe 2 weeks of that time where he had a big meeting for the club. They were going to start club practices, and there was like 80 people in the room. And I walk in, and I'm looking around because I see this flat mat. I don't see any ropes, and meeting's getting ready to start. And I raise my hand right away, and I'm like, hey. And
No, you didn't.
Yeah, right away. I was, because, so I was like, I was gung ho, I was excited. And coach just kind of gave me, he looked, Randy Miller's his name. Randy looked, he's like, what? Like, we haven't started yet. Like one of those looks. And I said, "Where are the ropes?" And 79 people fell out laughing. And I was so confused and, at the same time embarrassed. So I just went with it. I was like, got y'all. And I remember sitting there like, oh, what am I doing? And yeah, a week later, and we start training. And a week later, I go home and told my parents, I said, "Hey, I'm quitting all my other sports. I'm only going to wrestle." And they were like, "No, you can't do," like it was our plan. The plan was gymnastics was the plan where we were accelerating. And my sister was an elite gymnast. I was on my way, and we had a lot invested into it, right? As a family. And they're like, you can't do it. I said, "No, I found it. This is it." And after that year, I ended up finally breaking the JV lineup the last 4 matches of the year. And I went 2-2 on JV. I won 2 by forfeit. And then I begged Miller to, "Hey, coach, can I, because the JV would get done, and then it was just a varsity for the rest of the year, whatever, 3 weeks or 4 weeks, whatever it was." And I said, "Can I train with them?" And he's no. And I begged him, and he said, "All right, come on." And so right after they got done, then I was going to club practices. We'd have a couple days a week at our school, and I'd go over to St. Thomas Aquinas a couple days a week, and really wherever places were available on the days that we didn't have, I'd go. And then, my parents were amazing. They would take us to tournaments every Saturday, and after a year, my parents sat me down, and I was getting better. But I was by no means good. And my parents sat me down. They said, and my dad was like, "Hey, maybe we should go back to karate and gymnastics." And I'm like, "Nope, I love this. This is what I'm doing." And my mom goes, "Let me step in." My mom's the tough one. And she says, "Listen, you're terrible." I said, "But I love it." They said, "That has no bearing on it. You're terrible. We can't watch this anymore."
And back then, Florida wasn't like at the level it is now, right?
Well, you know what? It wasn't. I don't think the depth was there, but I know the year that I placed at the NCAA tournament, there was five of us at All-American that year from the state of Florida.
Wow.
So I mean, it was a big year, obviously, for that. So we had a good crew that came out. We ended up having a pretty good crew.
So is it like Bono and that? Was he in that class?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. Bono, Joe Morsetti, Mike Rogers, and maybe it was Dwight Gardner.
Okay. That's to your point. That's impressive. I wouldn't have guessed that because all we've heard is that Florida has come so far, and you don't really know what it was like back. This had to be what, early 90s, late 80s.
Yeah, like I graduated 92, so that year where we had 5 All-Americans in Florida, that was 96.
Got it.
So
yeah, that's impressive.
Yeah, it was a pretty cool crew.
So how'd you convince your mom? So what happened then? Your mom said, you're good. So what happens then?
So they said, okay. And they knew I wanted to do it. So they would take me to tournaments every weekend. So I was probably getting 80 matches in the summer, because I go to these tournaments, so 2 weight classes, but so I was getting basically 2 seasons worth of matches in the summer. And so that next year and my coach didn't pay a whole lot of attention to me, and why would he,
Mm-hmm.
And that next year I wrestled off for the varsity spot, and I got it. And I beat the guy, and the coach came up to me the next day and goes, "Hey, he was sick. We got to do that again." And so then I did it again, and I had to do it like 5-6 times. And I kept, now the score, I started to widen the gap in the score. And so, they stuck with me. And I'll tell you what, my first varsity match, I'm getting ready to run out, and my coach grabs me and he smacks me right across the face. Whack. And again, you got to understand, I haven't been around wrestling that long. I didn't know that people were doing this, So, and I remember running out and wrestling. And I came back, and during the whole match, the only thing I was thinking about, why the hell did he just smack me in the face? I came running off the mat, and I said, "Coach, what'd you smack me for?" I said, "It made me want to fight you." He's like, "It's supposed to make you want to fight him." I said, "I didn't want to fight him. You're the one that smacked me." I said, "Don't ever smack me again. I don't like that." And,
right.
And it was funny, but I'd never paid attention until after, and I was watching him after. He was smacking everyone, and people go out and wrestle. And I was like, "Yeah, don't do that to me." I didn't like it. So that year I had a pretty solid season, and they were placed in the top 4 at the state in Florida at that time, and I lost in the Conci semis, And I remember telling him, I said, "I'm never going to lose at this tournament again." And he laughed at me. "Yeah, all right, kid." Kind of. And yeah, again, same thing, same kind of spring, summer, train, wrestle everywhere I could. And sure enough, ended up winning state title that year, and then the next year.
Wow.
Well, actually, that junior year, Brian Smith came in my junior year. So Randy Miller, who he also coached Brian Smith at St. Thomas Aquinas High School. And then he left St. Thomas and went to Western. When he did, I started wrestling for him, years later. But now all of a sudden, full circle, Randy Miller takes a new program at Stoneman Douglas, and Brian Smith comes in.
And you went to coach for right after school, right?
That's right.
Yeah.
And he just came in from Michigan State, and I didn't know him, but I was full on transferring to Douglas with my coach. He's an amazing coach, and I was like, I'm going with him, and we got an apartment and everything, and I got caught. So I'm back. I got caught before I moved.
Caught how?
I don't, because we were terrible at it. We didn't know how to do this.
I should say caught for what? Like what?
Oh, you weren't allowed to leave schools and do all, you know what I mean?
Got it.
So they were like, we got the call. Yeah, you're not going there. That's not your school district. So yeah, we didn't have a real apartment. We had a fake address.
Got it. Yeah. Okay.
And so then I stayed at Western and wrestled for Brian Smith, and and Brian actually threw me off the team, I don't know, a month into being with him. He's like, "You're done," because
why?
I was probably a little boisterous to a teacher that I shouldn't have been.
Yeah.
And I was probably a little loose-lipped, and I was and he told me right away, and he just said, "I'm not going to have any punks on my team." And I was like, "But I'm going to win the state title this year," and I thought that actually meant something, Yeah. He's like, "We're not going to have punks on this team." And I said, "I'm not a punk. I outwork everyone." that was my whole, I outwork everyone. I'm going to win. And he's like, you got to do everything right. And yeah, so he kicked me off the team, and I couldn't go home and tell my parents because I would have gotten in trouble at home too. Right.
Yeah.
Why'd you get kicked off the team? I didn't do anything. Nobody gets kicked off a team for not doing anything. Right. So I decided we had two wrestling rooms in our school, and we weren't using the upstairs one anymore. He combined all practices. So I was in the upstairs room just doing stance motion, thinking it would blow over after a couple days. And he comes up on a Friday and says, hey, I heard you've been up here. What are you doing? You're done. I said, I love this. You can't. He's like, it's over. So I went home and fessed up to my parents, and, and they had no idea. They were picking me up every day after practice like normal. I came out and sweaty and, I was faking the whole thing. And sure enough, I told them and got in trouble there. And then they said, all right, let's go talk to him. Well, Ryan, we walk in, and the first thing my dad does is walk over and shake Brian's hand and says, hey, thank you. That's the best thing you've ever done. That's the best thing that's ever happened to my son. And I'm sitting here looking like, what's he doing? I thought they were there to fight for me. And then, my mom jumped in a little bit into, what do we have to do? And Brian came up with the plan, zero tolerance, zero tolerance from an academic standpoint, zero tolerance from a behavior standpoint. Every Friday, I had to get notes signed by my teachers that I had a good week and that my grades were good that week. And
dang, he's tough.
He's
tough. My God.
Zero tolerance.
Jesus.
Right? So it was funny. I went from literally, my grades were terrible when this started. And at that point I started getting, started excelling. I was going back over, I was over 3.0s. I was from like a 2.0 to, 3 3s, and it was like, everyone's writing like notes, like, who is this kid? And it just, I just wanted to wrestle so bad that I was willing to do anything. And and that's basically it's why I'm able to do what I'm doing now.
Wow. So what was his path from teaching and coaching at a high school in Florida to Missouri?
He coached in high school for 2 years. The only 2 years was my junior and senior year. And right afterwards, Jack Spates called him and had him come out to be, I think the name at the time, it's now like the volunteer, but then was called the restricted earnings coach.
Mm-hmm.
And so he left high school to give it a shot, to go to Cornell and be the restricted earnings coach. And then he was there for 5 years, something like that, 6 years, maybe I don't know, maybe longer. It wasn't very long. It wasn't a huge stint. And then took the Syracuse job.
Yep.
Syracuse program dropped, but they gave it an opportunity to save it. He took that job. And after a year of fundraising, and he did a great job, but after a year is too much. And that's when Missouri opened up, and he took the Missouri job, and I jumped on that same year.
That is so crazy. Full circle.
Wow.
That is, and I was definitely going to ask you about your, time at Missouri, because you got there during the definitely the building years, when you guys were, really on the come up. What was like the current state when you got in there, and like, how good were they? And what was that scene?
Terrible. We were terrible. And again, I don't even know if we had any national qualifiers in the room at the time. Maybe one, and I know that first year we qualified one guy. That first year, coach, we qualified one guy on a wild card.
Wow.
One guy on a wild card. And, so I remember we drove the NCAA tournament was at Penn State that year. And we had no money. I think Brian, I got paid $0 that year. And I think Brian Smith made 34,000 as a head coach. And that's another good one. Is I remember calling my parents excited, hey, I got my first college coaching job. And right away my dad's like, well, how much money are you making? And I said, oh, money? Yeah. There's no money the first year. He said, that's not a job.
Oh, man.
Yeah. So it was wild, man. It was wild. But yeah, so it was definitely, I think Jeremy Spates is probably we had Mark Bader was on that team. He was a freshman. So of my first year. And then, after that first year, I know we had Jeremy Spates kind of led the charge as far as being he was supposed to come in. He was just going to come for 1 year and then transfer back to OU because they had Michael Leitner in front of him.
Got it.
And he came there for a year and fell in love with the place and never went back, and so he really started, his crew, him and Bader and that crew, they started Tiger Style.
Got it.
They branded Tiger Style, and Jeremy Spates even has a tattoo of it on his shoulder, which I'm sure his dad was not thrilled with at the time when he was supposed to be coming back to OU, but
and his dad was coaching at OU by now. That's right.
Yes.
Oh yeah, because he went from Cornell, then Rob took over at Cornell. Man, tangled webs we weave, Lee Pritts.
Yes, sir.
So what was the turning point in like the early Missouri years to start getting some hammers?
Really, it was Jeremy Spates led the chart, It started with, again, you got to go back to Brian Smith and the principles that he puts into the program, right? And then
what are those?
Well, just like the principles that he did in high school, he was going to have people doing it the right way. You had to live the right lifestyle. He wanted people that were not only passionate about the sport, but he wanted people that were passionate in life and trying to do the right things. And that's what he did to us in high school. And that's what he was starting there. And so we had a good group of kids. And then all of a sudden you build in that wrestling work ethic that was being developed in a system of wrestling, and the guys were starting to get better. And then all of a sudden you get a guy like Jeremy Spates who came in and, he's a coach's son, right? So he's doing it the right way. And he has a big network of people. And then, and so you're just out recruiting all the people they know. And, and that's how it started building, just all of a sudden we're 3 or 4 guys at the national tournament. And then it's year 4, I think, was the turning point where, big upset win over Oklahoma State in a dual meet, and
at Gallagher or at Mizzou?
It was actually at a high school gym in St. Louis.
No shit.
Yep. It was, I can't remember the high school, but it was November, right? It was November, or I think it was November. I know it was early, first semester for sure. And, we really, they weren't ramping up for anything. They weren't ramping up till second semester, and we kind of knew that, but we ramped up real hard. We didn't know if we could beat or not, but we just wanted to, if we were in a battle with them, it gave us some credibility, and it just worked out perfect to where we get there. The gym's like 100 degrees. It's so hot, and we're like, we got our guys out of the gym, and they weren't really paying attention to it. And yeah, I remember that was Pendleton and Askren's first match.
I've seen this dual meet footage now that you say this.
Yeah. And Pendleton threw up on Askren's back going into the third period, I believe.
Yes, that's right.
So it was a wild duel. He ended up winning that match. It was a wild duel, and I think the heat really affected their team as well. And we snuck a close one out, and that really helped us turn the corner.
Man, that is such an epic rivalry, the Askren-Pendleton series that you bore witness to. I mean, I don't even know how many times they wrestled, but a lot.
I don't know, they wrestled maybe 7 times. Ben won one of those,
Is that it? I thought it was more than that.
No.
Oh my God. So maybe not much of a rivalry.
That's right. That's right. He was pretty athletic, which was kind of Ben's kryptonite.
Who was the first one to put a call into Ben Askren during the recruiting process?
Oh, that was all Brian Smith. He was on it. He you know, I wouldn't assume that Ben was smoking dope and, you know, he tie-dye shirts, hair out to here, just a happy-go-lucky hippie,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and, you know, he was not, that wasn't him at all. And yeah, Brian, I don't know exactly how it came about, but I know Brian was on him.
And when you have someone like that come in, you know, one of the best folk stylers of all time, what did you learn from watching him and his approach to how he broke things down technically?
Well, his approach was great. You know, his approach was, he knew exactly where, well, I'll back up. I remember telling him, I was trying to, I didn't spend a million minutes with him, right? But I remember trying to spend some time with him on a tilt, you know, because everything he did was take you down and pin people, you know, pinning stuff, you know, and so I was trying to show him a tilt, thinking, hey, you know, we can get him to tilt some people and score some more points that way. And he seemed pretty uninterested, and you know, it was a little frustrating. I'm like, God, man, I'm trying to show this guy something. And he's super respect, but he was kind of, and when we got done, I remember saying, why tilt when you can pin? And the coach in me was kind of, I wanted to be right about something, right? I wanted to be right. And I walked away and came back the next day. I said, because you can tilt people, you start widening the gap in the score. Now they start to lay down, easier to pin them. He said, listen, I work pinning combinations. If I don't get a pin, at least I still got the back points. On a tilt, you can't get a pin. And I was like, okay. You know? But that was him as a freshman with his mom, you know, and so that was impressive to me. But yeah, he really, he came in, he wasn't having great success.
Mm-hmm.
You know, he wasn't having great success, and he was frustrated. And the story goes that him and Matt Pell were roommates, and he walked in one day and just started crying to Pell, and he's like, how can I win at this level? I'm not strong. I'm not fast. How am I going to win? And it was around that time that Mike Ironman moved in with me.
Mm-hmm.
He came from the Olympic Training Center, and he moved in and wanted to train with us. And him and Ashton started working out every day. Right after practice, Ben would go through this is Ben's redshirt year. He would go through our practice, and then every day after, him and Ironman would go for an hour and a half.
Wow.
The clockwork. And Ben was always really good at scrambling. And then you take a guy like Ironman, who's great at scrambling. And I think they both just fed each other, you know, and got really, I think they combined their systems and went to the next level with it. Right.
Mm-hmm.
Because Ben lost like 9 or 10 times that freshman year as a redshirt, you know, and then after that, besides Pendleton, he only lost one other match.
Wow. And he's just one of the guys you had in there. I looked at, you know, obviously the roster of guys you've coached. A ton of them are, you know, in the UFC or were in the UFC, and now you're at Arizona State. You actually came in under the previous head coach. Is that right?
I did. I came in with Sean Charles, who Sean and I coached together for 2 years at University of Missouri.
At Mizzou, yeah.
So
go ahead.
No, so yeah, so I came in with him, and we were here 2 years before Zeke came in.
Where were you the day you heard that Sean was let go?
I probably shouldn't tell the story, but I will anyway.
I love those stories.
Yeah. Well, and Sean's a great coach, right? Sean's a great coach. We were under a different administration, and there wasn't much support. You know, there wasn't really any support. You know, I remember meeting the AD at the time, and all 3 times I talked to him, he said, "Nice to meet you."
Oh boy. Oh my God. I hate when people do that.
Well, you know, it's your athletic director. You know, I was like, oh, you don't even know I'm here. You know, which is, you know, again, no big deal, but it was a big deal because we didn't have much support. And in February, Ray Anderson, our new athletic director, he got hired. And I actually heard, like a year prior to that, I was hearing, like, you know, the Olympics, the Olympics dropped, and and again, rumor or not rumor, I have no idea. I still don't know this day, but I heard Zeke was sniffing around, and hey, I heard Zeke was in town. I said, I don't know, I didn't see him, and so again, I don't know if this was brewing or not, but I said something to Sean Charles, hey, heard Zeke's in town, and I said it to him like 3 times over a few weeks, and he said, my job's not available. Sean told me that. I said, well, I hope you're saying that because I'm your assistant coach and you want me to feel better. You don't really believe that. I said, it's coaching, man. Our jobs are always available,
Right.
And sure enough, that February we get the new AD in, and when the new AD comes, his first hire was Zeke. They let Sean go and hired Zeke a week later. But I remember walking in, the West Virginia job was open at the same time. So I remember calling Don Bakke, our associate AD, or texting him. I texted him, hey, coach, can I come see you today? Because I wanted him to make a call for me. And he said, yeah, come at 11. I said, all right, beautiful. And then 5 minutes later, he sends me another text, and bring Tyrell Todd with you. And I went, oh. And this is like 2 weeks after NCAAs, you know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
things are always that. And I've been around long enough to know that was not a good, bring Tyrell with you. And I said, well, my issue's more personal. He said, well, we'll talk after. I need both you guys. And that's when I kind of, it started crossing my brain. And I go up to our office, and Tyrell's in there. Sean's door's closed. And I said, hey, where's Sean? He's meeting with Ray Anderson right now. I said, dude, that ain't good. And he goes, no. Sean called the meeting. I said, maybe, but Ray changed the subject.
Yeah.
Like, it ain't good, man. And sure enough, when I walked up there to talk to Bakke, we walked up at 11. And I said, hey, coach, how's it going? Did all that. And he's like, hey, we had to let Sean go today. I was like, does that mean we're fired now too? And he said, nope. And this is an at-will work state. And I go, what's that mean? And he goes, well, if you come to work, you get paid. If you don't, you don't. I shook his hand. I said, I will see you tomorrow. I didn't ask any more questions. I didn't talk about West Virginia. I didn't know what was going to happen, but I was like, man, I'm coming to work tomorrow, and that's what a week later, Zeke gets hired, and maybe it's 2 weeks, but then he comes in and basically says, hey, why don't we try this for a little while? And then we'll see if we want to work together. So great. And, 3 months later, 4 months later, whatever, we ended up with the #1 recruiting class in the country. And he said, hey, this is going pretty good. You want a job? And I was like, yeah, it sounds good to me.
Awesome.
So that's kind of how it went down.
How long did Tyrell stay for?
He left pretty quick. I don't know the ins and outs of it, but I know he went to Purdue pretty fast from Zeke getting hired. I don't know, maybe a month or 2.
Okay. I mean, that's pretty rare to have someone from the previous administration stay on.
Yeah, I thought I was done for sure. I think he actually Zeke had me hosting people for my job or something. I know Steiner came in. He's like, hey, you want to take Steiner around? I said, for my job? Not particularly, but I love Steiner, so sure.
Oh, my God. And had you known Zeke before this?
Not really, a little bit, but not, I've been in several of his practices and stuff like that, and talked to him once or twice but no, we didn't really know each other.
And so you end up staying, and you mentioned the recruiting class was one of the feathers in your cap. And, if you put in Lee Pritts in a Google, you see recruiting expert, mastermind, whatever next to it. And, I know you have a real prowess there. And one of the things I heard you say on a Flow interview is that the moment you started just being yourself, you could build actual relationships with the recruits. Yeah. And I thought that was pretty powerful because I'm in sales and it's all about relationships. So when did you learn that?
Talking to coaches in other sports. I hated recruiting. When I first started, I didn't like it. I thought it was pretty nasty, right? It was pretty, you got to remember, I cut my teeth in the Big 12, and at the time, and at the time that it was a pretty tough crew in there. You got John Smith, who's relentless. You got Jack Spates, relentless.
Mark Perry was relentless.
Yeah, always.
He was still there, right, when you were there?
He was. He wasn't.
Oh, he wasn't. Okay, I thought he was there in the mid '90s. Okay.
He was. I didn't get there till 98, 99. Okay. Something like 90, maybe 99, 98, 99, something like that. So he was still on the scene, but he wasn't coaching at Oklahoma State anymore. And then you had Mark Manning at Nebraska. Oof. And Bobby Douglas at Iowa State, so you had like straight savages, and yes, and I'm just recruiting I didn't understand it, and I'm thinking it's about sales. That's what I was actually trying to sell something, which is clearly the wrong approach. And, and I remember Jack Spates helped me a lot in the recruiting area, and I talked to him a lot, but again, I didn't know what he was telling me was truthful or not, because he's the enemy coach, or we're coaching his son, and he was being 100% truth, but I didn't, I'm like, is he trying to get me? It was one of those two. And so then he suggested that I call other coaches, and I don't know if he meant from other sports or not, but that's how I took it. And so I started calling some other just random football, basketball, baseball, other coaches, and just picking their brain and asking, and hey, I'm a young coach. I'd like to get good at this, and this recruiting thing's terrible. What's your, and most of the things I just kept hearing is be yourself, be you. It's got to be real. Develop relationships. Get to know the families. This isn't a kid choice. It's all those things. And I was like, oh, I like people, so that's great. And that's what I started doing is, and talking to, coaches, even talking to coaches when you weren't recruiting their kids, but building relationship with the high school coaches, and I was able to be myself. And that was the greatest thing is once I started doing that and got out of the sales game, it really helped tremendously.
And are you of the belief that when you're coaching at Mizzou or even Arizona State, for example, that one of the keys is to like own the home state, or is that not as important as people make it out to be?
I think it depends what state you live in.
Yeah. Yeah.
If you live in Pennsylvania, you're going to want to own that state, right?
Right.
But I think it's important. I don't think it's an end all be all, but I definitely think if you go back and look at all the teams that won a national title, nobody does it without their in-state kids, right? You may have the majority of your point scorers from across the country, right? But you got to have some of your own in-state kids in that lineup. That's how it's, the formula's out there, right?
Yeah.
And so, I think it's important. And, and the state of Arizona is starting to grow, which is good because it used to be good, years ago. It was a really strong state, and then it wasn't for whatever reason. I don't know. But when I got here, there, until RBY placed, the last All-American before him was Robles.
Wow.
And now we have RBY and Brandon Courtney, right? But those, our state needs to be having several every year. Pennsylvania has, dang near 20% of the podium at the NCAA tournament.
Yeah. So true. And like, as I look at my own state, Illinois, it really is dependent on the strength of the academy scene and the strength of the high school coaches there. And I was looking at some of the Ironman results, once in a while you would see Montini in the top 4, And that was always really prideful to see that. You know, you didn't see that this year, but there were some standouts. But yeah, those high school coaches and academy coaches, vital. And if you look at what's going on now with Larkin's Club and Douglas brothers, it's amazing to see, you know, what Arizona's starting to do in that area.
Yeah, and Angel Cejudo is actually the head coach of that.
That's right.
Man,
yeah,
they're doing a great job. You know, they're doing a great job as and not just for Valiant. They're doing with the Thoroughbred Wrestling Club. They're doing, you know, a standout job developing, you know, and it's getting other people working their tails off, right? It's making other people work hard, and it's good. You see the state is starting to have growth.
Definitely. And I was obsessed with Arizona State as a kid, and I went down to the camps when Sergey was coaching the women's team, and they would practice at Sunkist Kids in the summer. And Tom Ortiz was the coach, but Larkin, Kane, you know, Aaron Simpson, Bader. I mean, those were like just solid teams.
So good, right?
Yeah. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Now, we've talked wrestling this whole time, and this is a wrestling podcast. I have about 5 minutes left, but I got to ask you a few off-topic questions.
Yep.
What river are you surfing/swimming in some of those videos on Instagram?
Not a river.
Where the hell is that at? That looks crazy.
It's a drain ditch. That was COVID craziness.
I thought so.
So me and my wife, you know, every day, you know, and it's a drain ditch right next to my house, right? And every day, you know, like we were doing Zoom calls, but there was no workouts, there was no wrestling going on there, you know. So we were actually doing a lot with recruiting on Zoom, and that's when we got, you know, Frank Molinaro and Mark Perry to come on board. So we were working our tails off to, you know, for that first month when things got real crazy. But so me and my wife were just working out basically twice a day, and you know, we were doing, like, we'd be on the playgrounds, you know, running down. We'd run right down next to that drain ditch, and there's a couple playgrounds, and we'd be doing prison yard workouts, you know, on the playground, and you know, and then like in the afternoon we'd ride our bikes, and you know, it was actually good family time. And one day we were like, man, we ought to act like I'm surfing in that thing. And so we did one video where I just jumped in and paddled down it, and it actually was good. I ended up paddling like a mile, you know, like a mile. I just tried to get my shoulders ready for when I did get to surf. And then all of a sudden I said, we got to do the triathlon. And so I did this whole fake triathlon where I did the swim, right? I did the swim, and there was like this little at the end, and when I passed through, I'm like raising my hand like I won the swim and acting all dramatic and smacking the water and stuff. And then we did the run, and I put on full sweats, and she made me like a jersey number for the back and pinned it onto my sweats. And same thing, I like crossed the finish line and dropped to my knees and partied, you know, and then I did the bike, and I'm a big beach cruiser with like the fat tire, and I had a drink in the cup holder and flip flops on, you know, the same thing, and acting like I won. It was just messing around. We had a blast.
I thought it was real until I saw the bike with the sand tires on it. Because there were some actual rapids you paddled through at first. You kind of dip in.
Yeah.
I'm like, is that even like clean water? Like, what is that? I didn't know.
I don't think it is.
I don't think it is. So that was awesome. And just really fun to see that. The other thing I got to ask you about, do you have a half pipe in your backyard?
Or is that? Yeah. We have a house in Florida, and we have a whole skate park back there.
That is so badass. Your kids must have the best time with you guys. It's just another thing I saw, you know, I always check everyone's social, and I'm like, dude, that's a half pipe and he's skateboarding barefoot. What the heck is this?
Yeah. Our son rips. He's really good. He's unbelievable. But yeah, so he taught, you know, I surf. I've never really been a skater, but he taught me, you know, how to drive. And that was the first time I did it. I dropped in. I had to, like, I was afraid to, right? I was afraid to. And I've been on skateboards, like longboard and carving, you know, bombing hills and stuff. But, you know, that's a little different. So all of a sudden I'm on this and I'm like, I'm scared. So I took off my shoes and socks and my shirt. My wife's like, what are you doing? I said, it's going to make me fully commit. If I have all, if I have shoes on and a shirt, I said, I might chicken out halfway through. She's like, that makes no sense. I'm like, it does to me. and yeah, so that's how I kind of started.
Man, that's awesome. Well, you're a man who lives life, and I wouldn't be doing you justice if we didn't mention the team trophy last year, Arizona State getting a team trophy. One of the hardest things to do in Division I wrestling from a teen standpoint. And I heard through Flow that your AD was actually there, and they go to all the stuff. So I just want to congratulate you and the staff, because that's just a hell of an accomplishment.
Hey man, I appreciate that. And our boy stepped up. That one of the best rounds of wrestling I saw came after one of the worst I've been through. And we went 1-5 in the morning round on that Friday, and we didn't have to say anything to the team. They rallied together and they came back that night and went 4 or 5.
Wow.
Went 4 or 5, and it was awesome. No, sorry, 5 or 6. They came back and went 5 of 6 on Friday night, and it was awesome to be a part of.
I mean, so powerful to see that. And, West Coast wrestling, we need it. Thank God Stanford stuck around. But, like you said, I think back to not that I was alive, but, think back to those Bobby Douglas years where they were in the top 3, top 4 for a couple years there. And obviously 88, they brought home the title. And it's just awesome to see that for wrestling. And I really love the fact that you guys are doing that duel against Michigan in early January. That's going to be sweet.
It's awesome. It's awesome. We're excited about that. We believe it's going to be a big event. They got such a good team, right?
Yeah.
So,
yeah. I hope they bring everybody out. I know everyone's, we're trying to figure out lineups and all that, but I would think by then it's full go. And yeah, I mean,
I'm sure they're going to have everyone.
Awesome. Awesome, man.
They're going to have everyone. I'm sure Massa will be in, and Soriano, and,
Michik, hopefully. I mean, I just want to see Hammers.
I'm sure he'll be in. Yep.
I love it, man. Well, wish you nothing but the best, and really appreciate you coming on, Coach Pritts. Thank you, sir.
Hey, man, I had a blast. It was fun, and appreciate what you're doing, and keep it up.
Yes, sir. We'll see you around, my friend.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Wrestling Changed My Life. To see video clips from this interview, please go to Instagram at Wrestling Changed My Life. This episode was proudly presented by Spartan Combat. The Spartan Combat Nationals are returning to Jacksonville, Florida, April 8th through the 10th, 2022. Register now at SpartanCombat.com.